Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Richard Seymour presenting False Healthcare for Women. My name is Cassandra Carlson, and I will be hosting the webinar on the back end. This webinar is approximately 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. Please enter any questions you may have in the Q&A box. We will address them at the end. Moderating for us today is Dr. Cynthia Wiggins. Dr. Cynthia Wiggins is a highly experienced family and general dentist at Alpha Omega Dental Center in Marquette, Michigan. She proudly provides a wide range of dental services to help patients improve and maintain quality oral health. Dr. Wiggins is an active member in the Fellow Academy of General Dentistry, triple board certified in dental sleep medicine for sleep apnea treatment by the American Academy of Dental Sleep Medicine, and board certified in craniofacial pain by the American Board of Craniofacial Pain. She is a diplomat of the American Board of Craniofacial Pain, American Board of Craniofacial Dental Sleep Medicine, and American Sleep and Breathing Academy. And I'll hand it over to Dr. Wiggins to introduce Dr. Richard Seymour.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the presentation that we have for you tonight. And please help me in welcoming Dr. Seymour. He is a fellow Yooper, meaning he's from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, who is now retired, so he's not up here anymore, but once a Yooper, always a Yooper. He has published several items, including Stop the Headache, a cure for the leading cause of recurring headaches and chronic pain, Why Women in the CRANIO Journal, and an upcoming title called Stop False Healthcare for Women. He is a lifetime member of the Greater Milwaukee Dental Association, the Wisconsin Dental Association, American Dental Association, and was a member of the American Academy of Craniofacial Pain for several years. In '97, he successfully spearheaded a drive with the Wisconsin Dental Association to meet with legislators and Governor Thompson to pass the first TMJ bill mandating major medical insurance companies cover phase 1 TMJ ortho treatment. That's a huge accomplishment. His goal has always been to bear everlasting fruit and leave everlasting footprints on eternity. Please welcome Dr. Richard Seymour and enjoy his presentation.
Hello, everyone. I couldn't be more excited to present this. I'm elated. I have been a specialist in treating chronic migraines for over 42 years, and I believe dentists have the solution to much more than just the headaches, as this webinar will prove to you. And it's very, very exciting for women to be able to stop all these debilitating neurological disorders from being blamed on hormones, which they've unfortunately been forever. So stick around for the last truth in particular. This is all based on irrefutable truths, neurological and anatomical facts, laws of physics, undeniable scientific medical studies. So by the end of this, I want you to realize this is an opportunity for all of the members of the Academy and women around the world to be part of leaving our footprints on healthcare history. Tonight, I'm here to share with women and the AACP the joy of freeing women from centuries of false healthcare. This is exciting stuff. I want to thank Dr. Wiggins for her wonderful introduction and agreeing to be the monitor for the Q&A at the end. I would like to thank the Academy for the opportunity to reach so many people from my living room, and Cassie running the webinar and everything. This is like returning to my early days of practice, the excitement. I was only 2 years into practice when I first started treating these patients. And I'm not kidding you, I was seeing the rebirth of adults, and I wanted to get up on the rooftop. I told my family, I said, I really feel I should get up on the rooftop and start yelling from the top of my lungs, because I was at a busy intersection, and I knew that most of the people sitting there at that light either had the problem or they knew someone who had migraines, or at the time I was focused on headaches and migraines. Now it's a much broader scope. The book that you see up on the slides here and that article, Why Women, are the seeds that founded this webinar, Stop False Healthcare for Women, and the seeds to get me started on the second book under the same title. This will surprise many of you. The big word or the main word for 2020 was pandemic, which means disease that's prevalent throughout a country or the world. Well, what I'm trying to tell you is that there are 25 major life-altering neurological disorders where women double and triple men. And they don't even know that they're out there. Nobody's compiled the list. I compiled it for the CRANIO Journal article, but you don't see it in any other publications that women are going to look at. And the fact is, I'm going to give you the list for starters. I'm only going to give you about 13 of them. Chronic debilitating migraines, recurring tension headaches, sinus headaches, sinusitis, chronic depression, chronic fatigue and insomnia, fibromyalgia, women are 9-to-1, MS, and listen to these three, Alzheimer's, dementia, and stroke. And then there's adult scoliosis and osteoarthritis. Just that's 13 or so of the 25. You can get the entire list of 25. There will be a link at the end of the webinar that Cassie can provide. There's a link to that will give you the article, and you can read all 25 of them. And then there's also a link to the documentary we published for the book, we produced for the book, and I would recommend you watch it because I don't have time to explain all the wonderful rebirths and all the things that I saw in my practice. You'll get tears, I'm telling you. So let me start with a factor that is very exciting, a wow factor, I call it. My kids didn't like the term, but I like the term. All right. Imagine there's in America, there's 36 million who suffer from migraines. 27 million of them, 3-to-1, are women. If you were to take all 27 million women, line them up side by side, shoulder to shoulder, they would extend from LA to South Africa, halfway around the world. If you looked at it from cities, it would be every female of every age in the cities of Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Detroit, LA, and New York City and their metropolitan areas. Think of that. And in the world, they estimate 1 billion. Line those up, it would go around the world 15.5 times. I call that a wow factor. And in my history of my treating migraines, I can probably think of 7 people that I wasn't able to eliminate them to the point of 80% or above, without drugs, without surgery. I need your help. That's just on migraines. That's not all the 25. So you can imagine how many billion women are suffering. And we're going to be discussing the nerve that's involved in it. But I'm going to back it all up with irrefutable truths, medical studies, skeletal neurological facts, laws of physics, everything. I've just got so much to cover. So if I seem like I'm talking fast, it's not because I'm nervous. I'm telling you it's because I believe in this and I want to get it all across. So if you look at this nerve, don't be overwhelmed. Well, I'm talking about the chief sensory nerve of the brain. Those are the 12 cranial nerves, different colors there, but the blue one, the largest, is the trigeminal nerve. But if we keep calling it the trigeminal nerve, nobody's going to realize how important it is. It's the chief sensory nerve of the brain. And there's 2 of them, one on the right half and the left half of the brain. And that becomes very important as we get into this later. So I want you to look at that. So don't be overwhelmed by that. The next one shows that nerve, the large ganglion, the yellow ganglion you see here, is that blue one that you saw in the past drawing. But notice that nerve, branches of it, the maxillary, the upper, supplies all the upper teeth, and the mandibular supplies all the lower teeth. The ophthalmic branch goes to the eye, but the brain travels throughout the chief sensory nerve of the brain, travels throughout the brain and down the brainstem, even to the 3rd cervical vertebra. This is a massive system, and it's important you think of it as a system, not just, and the power of the name. And it connects to all the senses, has an effect on all of them. Also remember, I want you to remember, it's known as the migraine generator, but it's been known as that for over 100 years. And as I get into this, you're going to wonder, why on earth haven't people been checking me for this? if you're a migraine sufferer out there. Okay, and like I said, it's going to be on irrefutable truths. But I want to start out with an endorsement that Dr. Brendan Stack, one of the great pioneers in this field. There were 4 beautiful endorsements for the book from pioneers, but he says it very, very well. He said, Dr. Seymour arms women and the elderly. They are the primary victims of chronic pain and recurring headaches with the truths needed to confront the system that has kept them in pain for decades. Stop the Headache will open the eyes of their treating doctors by teaching patients how to examine themselves and ask their doctor, why have I never been told about this? Why have I never been told about this? That's the purpose of this webinar, is to arm women with the truth that they can confront the system. The system's going to have to be confronted. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, says, divine is the work to relieve pain. We go beyond relieving pain. Drugs will relieve pain. What we have is a solution. I call it a cure, but even on the cover of my book, it says cure. People have trouble with that word. But if the definition means that the problem's gone, and this is a solution. He also made this observation. Now, this is 2.5 millenniums ago, 25 centuries ago, 2,500 years ago, that he made this observation. People with crooked teeth are more prone to chronic recurring headaches. You tell me why this has taken so long. We're going to look at the skull. Its primary function is to protect the brain from blows, it's hard, it's all that. There's only 2 parts. It's to protect the senses also, your sight, your hearing, all the senses. But there's only 2 parts of it. There's the cranium and it's this jaw, the mandible, and these 2 joints. And we're going to go into the nerve that supplies them. And one thing I want you to know, that when that joint is dislocated here, right here, that bright light you see there, that's how thin the bone is between that joint that's rubbing against the bone and the floor of the brain. It's important that the teeth fit together like gears. We're going to go into things that are unique to the head and the mouth. I call them the onlys, but they very much explain why this works without drugs. It's the only part of the skeleton, the upper lower jaw, all the teeth and those 2 joints, wired directly to the brain by the chief sensory nerve of the brain, the trigeminal nerve, also known as the migraine generator. Look at these cover stories. In Newsweek, you'll notice they talk about the trigeminal nerve, and the next slide, you'll see that they cut the 2 main branches of that nerve off. The whole article is about the wonderful drugs that can change the vascular supply. Well, there's research out that shows that the trigeminal nerve, or the chief sensory nerve of the brain, controls the blood supply into the brain. And we'll get into that later. And then the next article is in Time magazine on preventing headaches. Again, all about the drugs to affect the blood vessels, but they cut off the 2 branches, the 2 biggest of that nerve, that go to all the upper teeth and the TM joint. Okay. All right. The next only, and this is a big one. Teeth are the only part of the skeleton exposed through the tissue anywhere in the body. Think about that. Nowhere else. And they're wired to the chief sensory nerve of the brain. I actually view them, they're almost like a circuit board that I can control the chief sensory nerve of the brain. The next only, it's the only joints in the body that are dictated to by 32 separate pillars with inclined planes and cusps all over. There's so many things that are dictating the position of that joint. The next only is, it's the only part of the skeleton covered by enamel, the hardest structure in the body. The reason for that is the enormous forces. The forces in the back of the mouth are actually greater than what you weigh. And you're repeatedly functioning against each other. The next one is the one that makes it the most complex, is that this, I told you, that nerve is on both sides, both halves of the brain. But when this jaw is being forced one way or another and it's dislocated on one side or the other, it's affecting one half of the brain one way and traumatizing the other side of the brain in a totally different way, which can create different symptoms to both halves. But it's the only free hanging bone that crosses the midline anywhere in the body. That's unique to this thing. The next only is, it's the only nerve that controls the most powerful muscles in the body, the muscles of mastication. Look at the size of that muscle in the side of the head. I'll hold the skull up, you can see it here too. Okay. Take your fingers, fan them out on your temples and clench your teeth. Most of you don't know you have a chewing muscle that far up in the side of your head. But what happens when people have dislocated joints everywhere else in the body? Muscles go into spasm. This is no different. But put that one in spasm on both sides of your head, and it's like putting your head in a vice. The only specialist trained with the training and technology to treat it, they can turn off the light switch to get rid of this pain, they're not on any healthcare teams anywhere. We're the only specialists, the members of the academy. We're also the only doctors that can prove to you. One of my patients renamed this. It's called the triplane comfort position. The triplane comfort position is where the jaw would like to be right to left, front to back, and up and down in height. All three of those planes intersect at that one point called the triplane comfort position. But one of my patients says, I don't like that name. I want to call it the happy place. Sums it all up. What this does, I'm telling you, it changes lives. It changes lives. We are the only specialist also. We can prove to you before doing anything, before we ever alter the teeth, we can use that lower orthotic, which you can see, you don't see, it doesn't affect your speech that much or anything. We can locate that happy place, the comfortable position, and then we can re-engineer the mouth to that spot. This is a structural engineering problem is what this is. We can show you in advance that we can find that position and prove to you for a couple of months that we've gotten rid of the symptoms before we ever, I wouldn't give my patients the opportunity to have phase 2 unless they got to the point where they were 80% better, because I might have to move the jaw a little bit further forward or right or left, but we can find that. So once we find that position, it prevents the rubbing on the disc. If I move that jaw forward a little bit, it's a temporary prevention, but it's a way of proving to you I can get rid of it. And I can drop that joint down a little bit so it's not, rubbing on it. A good example would be take your arm and rub on your ulnar nerve over here, your crazy bone. If you rub on it hard enough, you can make your fingers go numb. Now, would you like me to drug you forever for that, or remove your fingers, do surgery? What if I just moved the fingers, or I moved it just a millimeter or two to the side? All of a sudden, it's not happening anymore. The TM joint compresses against that chief sensory nerve of the brain thousands of times a day. Before splint therapy on the right there, you'll see that condyle is pressing right up against the back of the joint and the top of the joint. And on the other side, you'll notice what I just said about the ulnar nerve when we were talking. We've managed to move the jaw forward enough, just a millimeter or two, but it's not compressing that joint anymore, setting off any alarms. You can see here, we're the only specialist that can permanently change the way the bite fits. We can build crowns and make them taller. We can reproduce the happy place. The crooked teeth can be crowned and made straight or moved orthodontically with functional jaw orthopedics. There are multiple ways that we can do this. You don't have an option. When you have a pebble in your shoe, you're going to limp. When this happens, you're going to do all sorts of things to avoid this. You're going to get a limp in your mouth. It's going to cause a forward and lateral head posture. It's going to cause facial asymmetry. Look at this wonderful woman over here on this slide. That facial asymmetry, look at that. But look at after treatment. Look at the face. She's beaming. This is life-changing, folks. This isn't drugs. You'll see what it did to her neck, her head and neck posture. That was before and after. Masking with drugs allows the damage to continue. If this is connected to the brain, more damage is happening to the brain. Don't forget, we talked about Alzheimer's, dementia, and stroke. There's research now that proves that this nerve does govern vascular supply to the brain. So that's huge, but nobody's doing that research at this point at all. So some of you young dentists, women, men, can be a part of making huge, huge inroads. So his chart shows, ignore this, but trust me, the teeth break down more, the joint breaks down more, your vision's affected more, everything you're going to see in the next slide. Okay, healthcare costs are triple for people with TMJ versus non-TMJ. If healthcare costs in general are triple, but look at for eye care. Inpatient eye care is 4,300% higher for people with TMJ. It's 3,200% higher for ENT, and drug and alcohol abuse is 600% higher. This is a golden goose. Every one of these patients is a golden goose that keeps laying eggs for the healthcare system, the in-house system that keeps referring you to one doctor after another, but none of them know how to treat this or even examine for it. And you're going to hear a story in a couple of minutes that will blow your mind. All these things, they're not going to just go away on their own. Look at that. I mean, who could miss that? If you were really considering that nerve is of any importance, look how crooked those teeth were. We corrected both those mouths. I mean, lives totally changed. You would not even believe, I didn't have permission to use her picture, how beautiful this woman was after we were done. We can micromanage the bite now. We have bite computers that more than just the carbon paper, which you can macro manage, but this gives me so much information. My gosh, I can find, and I can balance it to just perfection. They look so much younger. They have so much more energy. I had 90-year-old women that were driving to their appointments. What if instead of, which was happening, so I started looking at my patients and they were right. Remember, I told you it's two halves of the brain, two enormous halves of that nerve. What if we were microbalancing, just like you do with the front end of your car, you get new tires, you get a front end alignment. What if we align this and we balance this out? And we know it controls blood supply to the brain. And the stimulus, maybe it's also for stimulus. Like I said, it's like a circuit board, the teeth. You can put your hand on top of your head and go tap. You feel vibration go all the way through the skull. So this is something that has to be looked at. And there's been studies already done that the trigeminal ganglion affects cerebral blood flow. And women double men in Alzheimer's, dementia, and stroke. Women, you ought to be irate. Why is this being permitted? You tell me. I spent my life fighting this, ladies and gentlemen. I spent my life fighting this. Let's go to this one. This will blow your mind. I'm going to give an analogy, but this is false healthcare. This happens to be a male patient. It's not like men don't get this. But women, they double and triple men. So say the power cord to your mainframe computer, your brain, in this case, is laying across the floor. People are trampling over it. That would be your crooked teeth, traumatizing it over and over. And it's also caught in the door jamb. That would be the parts that are caught in the joint itself. This man went to 9 neurologists. Now, say you had computer specialists that came in to look at your computer, 9 of them. And every one of them said, gee, I can't find anything. And they never looked at the power cord, and they never looked at it being caught in the door jamb. All it takes to diagnose this, to do a screening, I'm sorry, they can't move right and left equally. And if they were to stand behind them and put their little fingers in the ear and have them open wide and closed, they would tell them not to close real fast because it'll send them right through the roof, the swelling of that joint. So I'm just saying, how would you feel if you went to nine neurologists? One of them was supposed to be the best in the world. This man traveled to see these people. They've got to refer out of their systems. They have in-house systems. You'll go to all of them, but they actually, I've heard, I don't have the proof, they sometimes have to pay a penalty for referring outside the system. All they can do is drug patients. They get any number of drugs, and that's got to stop. Women need to know this. I can't tell you the list of drugs I've seen people come in with. We've got to get this out to women. They're the only ones powerful enough to change this. But the Academy, please join me. I need members of the Academy to join me on this. Okay? We members of the Academy, I want you to know we are in one of the greatest healthcare specialties in the history of mankind. We control the chief sensory nerve of the brain. Think of that. That's huge. It doesn't just affect the patient. It affects their kids, their spouse, everything. All right, these are the components of false healthcare. They're still blaming all this for women, and I'm sure any of you out there that have had this have heard it, blaming it on the Stone Age diagnosis of hormones or stress, and she can't cope. This is why I was confused with hormones for so many centuries. Another thing that happens at that time is the second molar, the 12-year molar, and the eye tooth develop at that time are the cuspids. Look at this case right here. Those two cuspids are separated by a millimeter. Her parents were flying her from Pennsylvania to see me multiple times, and we got rid of the migraines. But that millimeter, you know how many people that would continue, and it would never be diagnosed? Everything is drug, drug, drug. That's another part of false healthcare. That's not treating. Drugs cover. They cover, mask the symptom, give you relief. Everybody's happy about that. But the malaise, the side effects, all of those things keep going on. They're toxic over a long period of time. And Botox, come on. And people are doing this every 3 to 4 months. Women have 4 times the amount of TMD. I told you that earlier. Healthcare costs are triple for TMD. What percent of our close to $4 trillion health care bill in this country are women carrying? And women are unaware of these 25. That's a big deal. This is another thing of false healthcare. It's really sad because they never do any tests that can prove it's hormones or it's anything. They do all the CAT scans, the MRIs that prove they don't have a tumor, but they don't ever have anything they can go back to their friends and tell them, this is what I've got. You know, and that thing is only 2 millimeters from the brain. So if it was a slip disc in your back, no one would even question. These patients are experiencing hell. Here's the prisons, 8 of them. Endless drug and side effects of drugs. Endless medical bills, financial ruin for some of them. Hypochondria, nobody believes you because you seem to be a slacker. Divorce, lost relationships, jobs, loss of faith in God, in life itself. They overdose, inadvertently sometimes, and other times intentionally, suicide. It's that welcome to the dark side of false healthcare for women. This is why the time is now. Women have been oppressed for centuries. Why this is a great year? It's a 100-year anniversary when women got to vote. We need another group of suffragettes that are suffering all over the world. We need you to form, and you can march on social media. This is a whole new world now. Women are now in very powerful positions. 125 are in Congress now. We have 25 in the Senate. The Me Too movement and World Cup soccer, all of them want to be activists for women. Get in touch with them. We have the technology now to prove it. We've got all that to prove all it. We've got the irrefutable truths that I've given you here. We've got anatomical, neurological, orthopedic facts. The technology, the social media, the phones, those phones are going to be unbelievable. Nobody will be able to touch this. But the AACP cannot do this without women. They're not powerful enough to go up against big pharma and organized medicine. And I really want all you members. I need members to join me. If we don't do this, understand, to make this more personal, your daughters, your granddaughters, and I've got some more, even your sons are going to marry women. This can't go on. We can't sit back anymore. We've got to stop this never-ending pain, anxiety cycle. We have the power to do it. We can do it. I'm going to end with this quote. A word may seem as nothing at all, but it can accomplish nearly anything or destroy it. It only takes a spark to start a forest fire. Please join me. Make this a spark that doesn't quit. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Academy, once again for sponsoring this. And thank you, Cassie, for putting us up there. Thank you, Dr. Wiggins.
That was a fantastic presentation of a lot of information in a short amount of time. You get kudos for bringing in literally from A to Z, including the advancements in technology with your T-scan information. We truly appreciate the time that you put into your presentation and the fact that you were able to condense it down and squeeze a wonderful summary into a limited amount of time. If they are not a healthcare professional, what is, in your opinion, the most efficient way for them to discuss this with their healthcare provider without coming across in a manner that makes them not be received with an open mind?
Well, it's going to be very hard to do it have them have an open mind. I'll use as an example, I was at a retreat for our church, and a woman said, coming up to me at one of the breaks and said, I heard that you have the cure for migraines. Could you tell me in quick? I looked at her mouth and in 30 seconds, felt the joints, told her she had it. She went back to her, in this case, a dentist. And he basically, I met her in the church office the next Sunday. She said, oh, he thought that you're one of these quacks. And most days I took that in stride, but it wasn't a good day. So I said, let me get this straight. You went to see him for 25 years and he never diagnosed this. I diagnosed it in 30 seconds. And I'm the quack. We're going to need to make them nervous in some way. Just, you can be as nice as possible. Most of these patients, the record in my practice was 64 years. If you're suffering that many years, I think you have the right to ask that question.
In your experience, Dr. Seymour, have you found that the type of diagnosis and treatment process that you presented today, have you found that it helped any of your patients with vertigo?
Oh my gosh, yes. I'd be hard pressed to think of one that didn't. It goes hand in hand with the migraines. I ran into a mother and her daughter in church one morning and they were crying. They were dancing around in the hallway of their home because her migraines were gone. The vertigo. And she could actually shower by herself. She was a 19-year-old, beautiful blonde girl. And she was her grandmother who had the headaches for 64 years. And the doctors tell them that it's hereditary. The thing that's hereditary is the bite. Once we got rid of hers, grandmother came in and we got rid of most of hers. She was down to one med. And when we got rid of this, I told you it's so close to the front of the ear, she didn't need her hearing aids anymore.
And in your experience, Dr. Seymour, as you're helping the patients that entrusted you with their care, what was an average amount of time in which it took for the patient to be able to notice a reduction in their symptoms or signs?
Some patients, it happens in a week, but I'm not telling you that's everybody. That's not true. But that triplane position, that happy place, that takes a little expertise and it takes time to learn. I use inclined planes to advance the jaw and hold it forward. But it'll tell me if it's too dominant, if the tooth can't take it or it's irritating, whatever. But I learn it. I would say a month and a half, if they're not receiving any results at all within a month and a half to 2 months. But again, there's so few, it's not even worth talking about. And then once you get to the point where it's reducing, then I like them to be basically 80% to 100% symptom-free for 2 months. So I will keep them on the appliance for about 6 months. And then I will record, lock in place that happy place, the triplane comfort position, take models and study the engineering of what would it take to put them there.
Did you get your training? You had reference to Dr. Brendan Stack in a few of your slides. Is that where you learned to see things from the perspective that you can see them?
One of the blessings of all blessings is to have had it myself. That TET scan computer, I would recommend it to every dentist to put it in their own mouth. You will learn so much more. And with what we're learning now, I've learned so much in here about the importance. I mean, that nerve is proprioceptive down to 1/10,000th of a millimeter. Carbon paper doesn't tell you all that stuff. I mean, I go back so far, I don't know how many people use a pivotal splint, but I love the pivotal splint to deprogram things right in the beginning. It's like giving them an ice rink. But again, if all you're going to do is balance 2 points, that TET scan computer is unreal. And then you get them balanced and they're on an ice rink. The jaw is free to float where it would like to go. I want this to be for the academy a boon for people to join and for them to have seminars all over the world. We're glorified structural engineers and electrical engineers. We can correct the electrical engineering and by correcting the structural trauma.
So you have answered a question that came in, and that was in reference to how more dentists would have the opportunity to learn how to treat. And your statement was to go through the Academy of Craniofacial Pain in order to learn how to do so. Another question that has been presented is for giving people a general idea, and this is kind of hard to give a straight answer on because it'd probably be dependent on the region that you're in, was what does the typical investment for the patient entail?
I had a slide there where I'm shaking our governor's hand. I got phase 1, you mentioned it in the introduction. But imagine this, they covered phase 1, the splint, the orthotic. And after I proved and I'd send in progress reports of the patients, which I'd recommend to everybody, have the patient fill one out every time they come in. You see how they're improving, but you've got a record in your chart forever. And I could still send it to the insurance company saying that they're better, and they still could deny. And I'd ask them, can I meet with the board? And I'd say, well, could you tell me your medical expertise on the board? They weren't even nurses, there weren't anything. And so I'd have to wait for another meeting that they would have a physician. And it would be either a guy who was retired or a young kid out of school. But that was their job, deny. How do you deny coverage to a joint you can't live without and the chief sensory nerve of the brain? I actually had an insurance company, and I won't give their name because they did back off. They were coming to reclaim $70,000 of money they already paid me, and they were going to take it from people I was now treating. And one of the women they were taking back the money from was the woman who had migraines for 64 years. And I said the same thing as I said at the end of this thing. If you want this to be the spark to start the forest fire, I've been waiting for this forest fire to start for, at that time, it was 30 years. Bring it. They were telling me I didn't have the right to use codes saying that I was treating the trigeminal nerve. It's all money. This all comes down to money. How much would it cost if you didn't have insurance? Well, splint therapy, to be on it 6 months, it would be $6,000 to $8,000. But again, in our state was moderately covered. It was HMOs that got their foot in the door 2 months after we got the bill passed. So if we go after this, Dr. Wiggins, if the academy goes after this, we're not after just phase 1, we want phase 2. And this is a neuro-orthopedic problem. This isn't a dental problem. Dental insurance has been covering $1,000 a year for 40 years. Nothing's gone up in price in 40 years, has it, Cynthia? Huh? $1,000. That's a pittance. It would have got you 4 crowns when I started. It would have gotten you 1 in the end.
Mm-hmm.
This is money. Cynthia, what would you recommend that I do to try and get the academy involved in this?
You're actually describing what the academy is doing as far as our communications with our patients and communications with our primary care providers. And for my community in and of itself, at this point in time, we're having a pretty significant turnover of healthcare providers, with a significant amount, if not all of them, of the primary care providers retiring. And the new primary care providers that are coming in are much more open-minded, not only to the relationships of apnea and systemic complications, etc., but also with helping their patients who have refractory headaches, that their traditional protocols are not helping, that they are referring their patients to me as the person who is in the area that has the ability to successfully relieve some significant issues for people. So in my opinion, with the healthcare community right now, we are at a wonderful point in time, at least in the Marquette area anyway, and that the new physicians, or at least new to the area, are utilizing the option more frequently than they did 25 years ago. Tobin, you asked another question, and that's a very good question. The numbers that he described, from my perspective and experience, and I've been treating TMD and sleep apnea disorders since '97. It does vary by where you are, and it varies by what all is being done. And the map that he flashed up looks kind of like the map that they now wonderfully, by the way, have available on the AACP's website, where you can go onto it and they have little pins in the map where if you look for where you are geographically, you can find providers who are either members of the academy or diplomats. And that will give you the opportunity to talk with people. And in my practice, the cost to treat is not the same for everybody straight across the board. It varies on what the issue is that we're looking at. There are people that have more to it, and theirs in the long run is a more of an investment than a person who is a primary clincher. So it's not a cookie cutter process where you do exactly the same thing on every single person, because every person is different. That map is something that I've been asking for like 10 years to make it more efficient in being able to find people, not only as someone in the community who wants to find someone to help them, but also when we have people who move and we need to find someone to transfer their care to, so that when they're retired or they're snowbirds or whatever it is, that we have someone that we know are like-minded in having the ability to continue taking care of them. Your dentist doesn't treat this. Most don't. There really is only maybe 2 to 3% of all of the licensed dentists that are in the world who look at this from a structural perspective. It takes being able to look at things from more than one direction to really puzzle out where everything is coming from. And it oftentimes is even beyond your head and neck area, where I personally work with a physical therapist and chiropractors to have the whole body be as balanced as possible, not just the head and neck area. So Tobin, what I would do is just try and contact their offices or look at their web pages and see what they have, what they describe. And there may even be comments made by people that they've helped that you can kind of get an idea of their mind frame and what they can do to help you. Good luck with you, Tobin. When you are in the hands of someone who understands what Dr. Seymour just presented tonight and how literally it can affect you from head to toe, it's life-changing. From a dentist perspective, and I'm a really good general dentist, giving somebody a life because they're no longer in pain is better than doing a crown any day. And if you can find somebody who kind of has that same kind of perspective, you're in the right hands. It looks like that takes care of all of the questions that have come in, Dr. Seymour, and congratulations on a wonderful presentation. We appreciate you taking your time, and we look forward to hearing from you again in the future.
All attendees, thank you. Look forward to next month's speaker, Dr. Angela Tenholder on June 9th. Thank you, Dr. Seymour and Dr. Wiggins, for your time and wonderful presentation. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks for your help, Cassie.
Of
Appreciate it.
course. Yeah, I
Thank you,
appreciate the
Cassie.
patience.
Very much.
Bye now. Thanks, Cassie. You're awesome.
Bye, you too. Thanks.